Thanks very much, Nick, and thanks everyone for joining and listening to a little bit about some ocean innovation companies that I think are really important for building what we see as the future economy for Australia. So we've just got a short video, an overview, brief overview of Seaforest, and then I'll just go into the stage of business development, where we're up to and where we're headed.
Methane from livestock makes up approximately 70% of our agricultural emissions, and agriculture makes up almost 15% of our total global emissions. In 2016, CSR grower James Cook University discovered that by feeding a very small amount of a red seaweed called Asparagopsis to ruminant livestock, we could virtually eliminate their methane emissions. This game-changing discovery had one bottleneck: no one in the world knew how to grow it. So we started Seaforest with the goal of being the first, largest commercial producer of Asparagopsis in the world. With the support of leading scientists and researchers, we've unlocked the secrets that drive commercial-scale cultivation. We grow the seaweed in the ocean and in land-based ponds, and have established one of the largest marine leases in the southern hemisphere, with the potential to feed over 2 million head of cattle, and through the resulting benefit in avoiding methane by approximately 5.6 million tonnes of carbon emissions from Australian agriculture.
Asparagopsis has this ability somehow to interfere with the microbes that would like to produce methane in the stomach cows. And it takes only a tiny bit. It takes 25 grams of Asparagopsis to remove up to 98% of the methane that a cow produces. And what's even more amazing than that is that all of that energy that would go to make the methane is instead used by the cow. So it's like giving a cow 20% more feed. They're healthier, they grow faster, they produce more.
By developing the science and technology to drive sustainable seaweed cultivation and pioneering the development of this new environmentally positive industry, we can significantly reduce emissions and really begin to create a meaningful impact. I think everybody on this planet wants to leave the world a better place than they found it. And I believe Seaforest is a company helping people do exactly that.
Yeah, thanks very much. So my name's Sam Elson and I'm the CEO and co-founder of that company, Seaforest. We're a company that's 5 years old. We're based on the southeast coast of Tasmania, and our focus, as you saw in the video, is on the cultivation of Asparagopsis. That seaweed, when included at 0.2% of the diet of a ruminant animal, can reduce methane emissions by up to 98%. So it's very, very exciting, very important work. In that short 5-year time frame, we've established some significant IP on the cultivation of this seaweed. It's a brand new species of interest, and it's we've had to develop everything from scratch. We've got a fantastic team of scientists, and through the collaboration with a number of Australian universities, we've developed some very important IP that's now driving the development of this new industry that seeks to collaborate with agriculture to decarbonise and provide a significant opportunity for Australian agriculture, as well as developing this new industry for Australia. Along with that IP, we've also established some impressive and incredibly valuable real aquaculture assets down on that east coast of Tasmania, including one of the largest marine leases in the southern hemisphere. We have built a fantastic team, not just scientists, but also engineers, marine farmers, and also ruminant nutritionists and experts in feed delivery mechanisms and industrial chemists. So a very broad team, and we're the absolute leader in livestock methane mitigation globally of all supplements that are available. We currently have over 40,000 head we can feed today, the capacity to feed 100,000, but the trajectory through our assets to feed over 4 million. And that work will continue, and the innovations that will deliver those outcomes are rapid, and quite amazing actually. And additionally, we've developed some fantastic relationships over that 5-year time frame with some blue chip customers like AACo, one of the largest beef producers in the country, as well as the third largest dairy group, Fonterra, we've been working with for 3 years. So we'll run through just a little bit about the company. So as you know, my name's Sam. I started the business with Stephen Turner. We both have a strong track record of building startups. My background is more so in sustainability, whereas Stephen's is in resources, but with, as I mentioned, a background in building startups from greenfields projects to large, and in Stephen's case, ASX listed companies. We're we're joined by our CFO, Dion Cohen, who also has a strong background in listed companies, finance director, and the disciplines that go with that. But the key ingredients in Seaforest really are Professor Rocky Denise and Dr. Nigel Tompkins. Back in 2016, when the CSIRO was doing this work, it was really those two that came together that created the science that led to the establishment of Seaforest. So they were feeding 30 different varieties of seaweed to livestock, and they found that one of those was the standout, which is the Asparagopsis. Now, it was Rocky that had introduced all of those seaweeds, and Nigel being the expert of the ruminant. And so together, it's really fantastic to have Nigel, who's now left the CSIRO and MLA, to join Seaforest as our head of ag development, and Rocky, who's left his tenured position at James Cook University to join us down in Tasmania and help to build this industry. And all of us are climate focused. You know, what we're trying to do here is addressing two of the most pressing challenges on our planet, which is fighting climate change and producing more food with fewer resources, and hopefully, creating tangible commercial outcomes for our farming partners and customers. And the gas that we're focused on is methane. And now a lot of you in the room may be aware, we're all climate focused, but methane has 28 times the warming impact of regular CO2 on our atmosphere. And agriculture, or the emissions from livestock, produce the vast majority of those emissions in Australia. And importantly, whilst we look at the size of the problem, but also we could also look at this as an addressable market, but there's 1 million cows on the planet, and those cows are producing 3 billion tonnes of CO2 equivalent emissions per annum. Now, we've seen globally, the introduction of the methane pledge. Countries around the world are starting to act towards taking tangible action. So in the Netherlands, for example, the government is buying back farms and reducing the number of livestock. The same is happening in Ireland. We've seen in New Zealand the introduction of the burp tax, and even here in Australia we have MLA, peak bodies, MLA and Dairy Australia, with very ambitious carbon neutral or low emissions targets by 2030, with no way of getting there without feed supplements. And so this is where I guess our solution, Seafeed, comes into it. It's an Asparagopsis-based feed supplement, which is included at 0.2% of the animal's diet and reduces up to 98% of the methane emissions. Through the cultivation process of that product, as Nick was talking about the importance of ocean health, the seaweed photosynthesises and captures carbon and nitrogen from the ocean, and therefore we've established that 40% of the biomass that we harvest from the ocean is carbon captured. But if you put that into context, one animal would eat, anywhere from 10 to 15 kilograms of this seaweed per annum. Only 4%, 4 kilograms of that is carbon captured, whereas that small amount of seaweed could reduce anywhere from 2.8 to 4 tonnes of CO2 equivalent, but if we're fed to livestock. So exponentially greater impact. I guess just to talk a little bit more about the way in which the product works, it disrupts the enzymatic pathway that would normally lead to the production of methane in the rumen. So in the final, all ruminants have 4 stomachs, and one of those is like a large gas chamber. And there are enzymes at the final stages of digestion that are disrupted, and what happens is it actually diverts that which would have been expelled by the animal as a gaseous waste product into energy which it uses for to improve feed efficiency, so energy for growth or the production of milk. What we've done as a business is a lot of work to reduce the cost of production. So now we have a product that has negligible impact to both the farmer and the consumer in terms of cost. So what we're talking about here is a 0.2% increase on a retail kilogram of beef and a 2.4% increase on a retail litre of milk to offset the cost of the feed completely. Now, we're working on, this does rely on carbon credits, and we are working on the registration of a VERA, of International Voluntary Carbon Standard project, and we hope, and also a part of a task force to develop an Australian methodology for livestock feed supplements. And so our IP we've developed is important. It comes right across the seaweed landscape, from the biology to the cultivation methodologies, the harvesting equipment, and the manufacturing processing into a finished product. So that entire piece of, which is very important, a piece of the supply chain is captured through our IP that has been developed by Seaforest. And just importantly, I think what is an outcome of the science that was back in 2016 by the CSIRO was the incorporation of future feed. So CSIRO had rights to commercialisation, so they patented the outcome that if you feed this novel amount of seaweed to livestock, you could reduce methane emissions. And we have a licence or a sub-licence agreement from a company called Future Feed. Now that licence gives you the ability to sell and then for our customers to make consumer-facing claims around products, but it doesn't tell you how to grow the seaweed. That has been science that's been developed by Seaforest. So just to clearly delineate out the difference between the two companies. And just to talk about our cultivation methodology, so we've taken a parallel approach. We grow the seaweed in the ocean and we also grow it on land. So in the ocean we grow on structures that are submerged 6 metres below the surface. We have 5,300 hectare marine lease in Mercury Passage and over 300,000 metres of crop rope, which we can currently occupy the bay. Seaweed is deployed on ropes. 8 weeks later we harvest it. It's an automated process that after harvesting the product goes back to our facilities where it's processed into a finished product we call seafeed. It's a liquid supplement and then and goes directly to the livestock farmers. So feedlots and dairies are our prominent market at the moment, but we are working on other feed delivery methods I'll talk about shortly. We also grow the seaweed on land in land-based ponds, utilising fresh seawater from the ocean. It's filtered, it circulates around a pond generated by a current generated by the paddle wheel. The seaweed photosynthesises, so it gets its carbon, its nutrients from the ocean, and there's obviously the sunlight, the 3 important ingredients for photosynthesis. Now, what's interesting is that, and Sam will probably talk a little bit more about this shortly, because Pacific Bio are doing a similar thing where the discharge is cleaner or more alkaline than the intake. So this land-based approach to aquaculture is really important, but it's also important because whilst we're growing a native or endemic species of seaweed here in Australia, we're forbidden from being able to grow that in the ocean in other parts of the world. So what we're able to do is to take this methodology, utilise the seawater, filter our discharge to ensure that we can get this product to where it's needed most. So quite transferable. And we also have a number of controls over environmental variables. So we've built on a strong foundation now for commercialisation. We've developed the science. We've supported about 8 academic trials and are now commercialising with some of our partners in beef, dairy and wool, and are now looking at global expansion. The company supported, as I said, 8 academic trials as well as working with the livestock sector, but we've also done quite a bit of science and IP around the seaforest cultivation, the seaweed cultivation itself. We've built a team that has grown with different stages of the company's development. We now have 50 employees, so this is slightly outdated. But, and as I mentioned earlier, across science, engineering, marine farming, and also now in the ruminant and agricultural space. Our assets, we started the business, we had a very small footprint. We had a shared laboratory. We've now established one of the largest marine leases, as I mentioned. We've also got a land-based lab, one of the only of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere, I believe. And we purchased just about over a year ago a 30-hectare land-based site with 660 ponds. It was a former abalone farm that we're now converting into a land-based seaweed cultivation facility. So these are really hard to replicate. We've obviously also got the permits and licences in place to be able to undertake these activities. These things take a number of years to get. And the other thing that takes a number of years to develop is the relationships with these customers. So a company like Fonterra that we started working with back in 2020 fed a small number of cows. They were dumping the milk. They wanted to make sure there was no impact or no seaweed flavour that would wind up in their milk products, and there was no impact on production return. So upon reaching a level of comfort around those points, they've then been aggregating the milk into the supply chain and building out the number of farms that they're introducing onto this. So that relationship has grown, but we're on that trajectory with a number of customers where they start small and then they continue to scale up. So we're working with some fantastic companies such as Ranges Valley, as I mentioned, AACo. The burger chain Grilled as well has launched a burger, which is really very exciting, and a number of others. And just in terms of impact, we talk about where we're up to today. We have 1/3 of our initial 1,800 hectares under cultivation at the moment, with the capacity to feed 100,000 head of cattle. But the full utilisation of the 5,300 hectares of marine space gets us to between 2.8 and 5.6 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent being avoided. This is from our existing assets. And through global expansion, we'll be able to achieve well over 8 million tonnes per annum. we talk about one cow being quite the equivalent of a mature forest in terms of its sequestration potential. And so what's important here is that we're up to an important stage of commercialisation, really. I guess just to finish off really quickly, I'll slide forward. We've raised about $58 million to date, with 46 million shares on issue. We have about $20 million in the bank, and the rest, a lot of that is on the balance sheet. We've been fortunate to receive a number of government grants. What we're up to, most of that capital is allocated towards the local expansion of the marine farm, but what we are focused on doing now is to expand internationally to support relationships that we have developing with supermarket chain Morrison's, with the Dutch dairy company Friesland Campina, and also with some South American opportunities. So if you're interested in having a conversation, let me know.
Recently, there's been some solutions emerging that bypass the seaweed entirely and synthesize the active ingredient directly. So what's your view on sort of these two types of solutions? Is this sort of video kill the radio star type of situation, or both can coexist? Just have a discussion on that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to respond. So, firstly, we've got to look at this as a problem, a collective problem as a planet. We have 1 billion cows on the planet, and we have 7 years until 2030, and we've got a hell of a lot of work to do collectively, not just in agriculture, but across all industries. And so there's a role for more than one product, I would say, that first and foremost. The second is that, there is a Dutch company called DSM, happy to talk about that. They have a product called Bovaer, which has a 30% abatement. So it's a synthetic product, but it doesn't have the same level of abatement and doesn't deliver any productivity benefits. Having said that, there are benefits to a synthetic product, but I'm not sure necessarily the same social license. What we're developing in Tasmania is not only a solution that helps stabilise ocean health, but also provides regional employment opportunities. So it's quite different, a different proposition, but I don't see those guys as competitors. I think we've got a very, very large job to do.
Hi, Louisa Kiley, Carbon Farmers of Australia. Sorry, over here. Just what method? Are you under development in an ERF method? Are you using a Vera method, there's one already, VM41?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so VM41 is the one we've registered. We've submitted our registration, or PDD. Yep.
Righto, but
we are working as part of a task force with a number of other stakeholders across the industry to develop a feed supplement method under the ERF.
Yeah, righto.
So, thank you.